Some footballers are legends, some are icons, but every once in a while, you get an artist, a player whose life story feels more like a tragic opera than a sports biography. Today, we're diving into the unbelievable story of Roberto Baggio, a player whose journey of pain, betrayal, and just breathtaking genius is almost too wild to be true. And that quote, it just nails it. His career was this constant battle between these incredible, sublime highs and just crushing, soul-destroying lows. This is the story of a hero who was misunderstood, who was admired, and who was ultimately defined by one of the most unforgettable moments in football history. So, let's go back to the beginning, back to 1980. A scout for a pretty small Italian club is just standing there, completely speechless. He's just watched a 13-year-old kid, Roberto Baggio, get involved in 65 goals in only 26 matches. I mean, for a scout from a third-tier team, this was like finding a winning lottery ticket. And the price tag to secure this future legend? £300. That's it. That's what Vicenza paid to sign a player who would one day command a world record transfer fee. It has to be one of the greatest bargains the sport has ever seen. Period. But from that amazing start, his journey takes a sharp, brutal turn. Before his genius could really take flight, Baggio was about to face an ordeal that would nearly destroy his career before it even got started, and it would shape the rest of his life. Okay, so he's just 18, and he gets his big move to a top-flight club, Fiorentina, for a huge fee. The dream is happening. Then, just 2 days later, disaster. In one tackle, he completely ruptures his ACL and tears his meniscus. It's the kind of injury that ends careers right there. After missing an entire season, he finally comes back, only to suffer another horrific injury that needs 220 stitches to put his knee back together. And if that wasn't bad enough, get this. Baggio was allergic to painkillers. Just try to imagine going through that kind of surgery and agonizing physical therapy with almost no relief. The amount of mental strength you'd need to get through that kind of pain, it's honestly hard to even comprehend. The pain was so bad, physically and spiritually, that at his absolute lowest point, he begged his mother, "If you love me, then please kill me." It was during this dark time that he found Buddhism, which he later said gave him the strength he needed to endure a pain he described as a hammer to the brain. But somehow, he did endure. Baggio didn't just recover, he became the hero of Fiorentina. He was their guy, the one they adored. But that love story? Well, it was about to end in one of the most bitter and controversial transfers the sport has ever seen. £8 million. Back in 1990, this was an all-time world record fee. And it wasn't just any club that paid it. It was Juventus, Fiorentina's most hated, most bitter rival. The fans' golden boy was being sold to the enemy. The reaction was instant, and it was violent. The city of Florence basically exploded. Fans flooded the streets with bricks, chains, Molotov cocktails. They saw it as the ultimate act of betrayal. The club president actually had to barricade himself inside the stadium just to stay safe. So you have the fans who felt completely stabbed in the back by their hero. But the reality was, Baggio was just a pawn in a much bigger game. He was forced into the move, totally against his will. The club sold him simply to save themselves from going bankrupt. He even refused to wear a Juventus scarf at his own press conference, which tells you everything you need to know about how he really felt. All of this drama, all of this pain, it all builds to the defining chapter of his story, the 1994 World Cup in the USA. This is where Roberto Baggio becomes a legend, where he hits his most heroic highs and his most devastating, soul-crushing failure, all in the span of just a few weeks. After a pretty quiet group stage, Italy looked completely lost, and then Baggio just took over. He single-handedly dragged his country through the knockout rounds, a last-minute equalizer and an extra-time winner against Nigeria, another late winner against Spain, 2 incredible goals to knock out Bulgaria. It was a one-man show. Think about this. 6 of Italy's 7 knockout goals came from him. He was on another planet, but in the semifinal, he pulled his hamstring. He was in agony, but there was just no way he was going to miss the World Cup final. He was pumped full of whatever painkillers he could take and sent out onto the pitch to play for the title. I mean, the stage was perfectly set, right? You have the hero, wounded but determined, on the verge of his ultimate glory after carrying his team through impossible odds. For a story this dramatic, this cinematic, there could only be one tragically poetic ending. After a scoreless game, it all comes down to a penalty shootout against Brazil. And of course, it all comes down to him. The final, decisive kick. The man who had been their savior all along steps up and sends the ball flying over the crossbar. Brazil are world champions, and Baggio is left standing there, a single image of despair that would define his career forever. That moment, it haunted him. And in a lot of ways, it was a turning point. The rest of Baggio's career was like that of a wandering genius, an artist who was always struggling to find a home in a world of rigid tactics, and managers who just didn't get him. A true poet in exile. After Juventus, he played for a whole series of Italy's biggest clubs. But at every stop, even with all the moments of sheer brilliance, there was always conflict. His style was so free, so based on instinct and creativity, and it just kept clashing with the rigid systems his coaches wanted to play. And this quote right here, it captures the whole struggle perfectly. It was reportedly said by a coach who just kept benching Baggio because he couldn't figure out how to fit this spontaneous genius into his strict game plan. To coaches like that, he was a luxury, a poet. To the fans, he was just magic. And you see this pattern with some of the biggest names in the business. He called the legendary Arrigo Sacchi mad for his tactics. He argued with Fabio Capello over whether he was fit enough. And get this, at Inter Milan, he flat out refused when manager Marcello Lippi asked him to be a spy in the dressing room. Baggio says that's why he was completely frozen out of the team. But despite all the conflicts, the injuries, the heartbreak, Baggio's legacy was never, ever in doubt. His final years at the small club Brescia were just a reminder of his incredible class, and his farewell to the game was a moment that went way beyond club rivalries. In his very last game, playing against AC Milan, the moment he was subbed off, the entire stadium, and I mean everyone, rose to its feet. Milan fans, Brescia fans, even Milan's own players like the great Paolo Maldini, they all stopped to applaud and embrace him. It was just this universal sign of respect for his greatness. And maybe another one of the game's great artists, Zinedine Zidane, summed it up best. The very idea of leaving a player with Baggio's unique genius on the sidelines was, to his fellow players, just completely unthinkable. In the end, no, Baggio didn't win as many trophies as his incredible talent probably deserved. He's often remembered for one single missed shot. But his story, a story of resilience, of artistry, and this tragic beauty, it's more powerful than any trophy cabinet. It really makes you wonder, what truly defines a sporting icon?